reminded me of something else when I was talking about notes, is that I do a lot of speaking in front of real estate clubs and seminars and whatnot. And I do get invited to speak quite a bit. I've never been paid to speak, but that's okay because I love sharing my thoughts and ideas. But one of the things I always say when people ask me, well, I'm a new investor, what can I do? I say, well, set up a Google Alerts. And a lot of people don't know what those are. But if you set up a Google Alert on whatever your subject matter is, you're going to get 8 or 10 different articles or podcasts or whatever the subject is sent to you, emailed every day. And you look at yesterday was the first time in a long time that I showed up on a Google Alert because I was in a newspaper yesterday morning, I believe it was, for a project that Dave and I are doing around the stratosphere in this area called Naked City, which is a very old area of town. We've been buying up a lot of land. The project I was talking about offline is a project that we bought maybe 10 lots in that area, and then 4 or 5 lots on the street next to it, and about 7 or 8 lots on another street. So we bought maybe 20 to 30 lots in this area. And so because of that, we were interviewed by the newspaper guy. And so I showed up in Google Alert before I got the newspaper. Then I saw the newspaper. Oh, there's my picture in the newspaper. Fine. But the point is, if you have a subject matter, like I said, if you're interested in foreclosures or real estate in Las Vegas or real estate in Southern Cal or wherever you happen to live or be, you'll get up to speed. I was just mentioning earlier that Airbnb, lease options, HOA foreclosures, flips, short sales, foreclosures, rentals, property management. Those are all areas that I've done and that I either own property. I own a real estate brokerage. We manage 300 properties. So I'm well versed in so many different areas of real estate that it's easier for me to communicate about it. But it's because I'm so well versed, because I do stay up to speed on Google Alerts and reading, and because half of my reading is not just the self-help books and the tapes and stuff that I listen to, but it's the updates of all the projects that I'm involved in. There's 3 or 4 new projects in and around the stratosphere in Las Vegas that were just announced within the last 6 months. 300 units or more that are being built, and we own a lot of land. So we're very excited about what's taking place, but it's a matter of staying in tune as to what the opportunities are.
And in regards to the Vegas market, and this is a little bit off topic from the real estate dads, is the market still highly focused on new developments within that area, or is there a lot of new corporate growth that's within the Vegas market now? Because that's one thing that I remember was a massive factor regarding the 2008 recession in Vegas, was that all of a sudden, with no new development, there was a massive exodus of people who were leaving the city because there just weren't jobs that were so tied to construction. Is that changed, or is it still a large portion of it that's focused on that, or are there a lot of companies that are moving to Vegas?
It's a good question. And Vegas, since the crash, has continued to grow again. We had record numbers. Super Bowl was great. The Formula One race was great. So we're getting more activity now. We have 2 sports teams, major. I mean, you've got the ladies basketball, but you've got hockey, you've got football. Now you've got baseball right around the corner. The A's are coming into town. So the growth is still there. There's a lot of new developments that are happening. The area where we're in is a very old area, built in the early 50s. So it's taking a little bit longer for that area to get gentrified. But guys like us that are coming in and taking a street like Philadelphia, and we've torn down 4 or 5 lots in a row where there was old buildings. And now people see it and go, wow, hey, there's some activity going on. On one of the other streets we have on Paradise, we've torn down 10 buildings in a row. So when people start tearing buildings down, we get noticed. And when we sat in front of the city council a few days ago, there was a project that was coming into town in this area, and it's called Transitional Living, where they wanted to have convicts that were released from jail into this area. And it's adverse to what we're trying to do. We're trying to build new development. We're trying to renovate older properties and bring in working class people that work less than a mile away at the casinos. And they wanted to bring in prisoners in this area. And it's like, it's a great program, guys, but we didn't want it in our area of what we're trying to do. So we spoke in front of city council. We represented ourselves as investors in the area, as developers. The Stratosphere general manager was there. He had signatures from all his employees, and it worked out great that they shot it down because the city council didn't want anything to do with it either. They have ideas where this area is going to be new and exciting and brand new construction, but it's going to take a little longer to happen, I think, than other areas. But once that first guy goes out of the ground and starts building, kind of like Wynwood. I don't know if you've been to Miami before, but there's an area outside of Miami called Wynwood. And my partner Dave is from Miami, and he said, man, 20 years ago, Wynwood was just like the Stratosphere area in Naked City in Las Vegas. It was old, beat up, it wasn't good. And now, Wynwood is amazing. You've got these 8-9 story high-rise projects, the residential living, you've got the clubs, you've got the bars, you've got the restaurants. It's a very dynamic area. It's a safe area. And this is exactly what's happening in this area here in the Arts District in Las Vegas, where things are turning around. If you look at it in 10 years, it's going to be totally different. And so we're on the inside of
the path of progress.
The path of progress.
It's pretty exciting.
So moving over to politics really quick, how do we as a society work with individuals who are getting out of correctional institutions, and how do we fix this issue?
Do we have to?
It's not top topic.
Yeah, I think we do. No, I think we do, and that's the great point. Let's talk about that along with the homeless problem, because we've realized that in this area we've got, not only is there a big homeless problem, but when I went to Oakland 2 years ago to watch the Yankees play, and we walked down to the stadium instead of Ubering, we decided to walk, and the homeless problem was unbelievable. I know it's bad in San Francisco; it's changed the city. It's bad in LA. It's a real problem. So with the convicts that are getting out of jail, they obviously need a place to transition if they're going to get back in society. But from talking to police officers and representatives that have these group homes and whatnot, and I do own 3-4 group homes also, where folks that are out of prison, or if they're out of an alcoholic problem or some sort of a problem, where there's a house manager managing them. And they rent the house from me. I'm not involved in the management other than being the owner of the property. But the group homes have worked really well on a small scale. So my answer is twofold. If you're going to do this project with the transitional living of folks getting out of jail, it's got to be in a smaller scale where it's easily manageable. But the bigger picture is the homeless, because the mental issues, apparently, from what I heard, talking to the police and the representatives, is about 50% of the people that are released from prison have mental issues. Yeah. And so that's part of the reason why they're in jail in the first place. So I believe we have to have somebody big, like a Jeff Bezos or a Bill Gates, come in and say, let's build literally a city or a facility where we can put them all. Kind of like, prisons. We have prisons and we put people in prison, and it's good. But if we did the same thing with the homeless, that I believe is the solution. You can't be on the street. If you're found on the street, you go to this facility. We try to get you back into society. If we can, great. If not, you stay there, kind of like a prison, but you're not a prisoner. You can come and go as you please.
So Washington is trying exactly what you're talking about.
State or
Washington
DC?
State. Washington State. They have this program. I got 2 brothers in Washington, one in Seattle and one across the Puget Sound, in Birmingham.
Okay.
Birmingham. And the state of Washington pays hotel owners nightly rates to keep rooms open for homeless people, essentially, right? They are paying they are putting homeless people up in hotels, right? And since they started doing that, homeless people have just flocked. Now where my brother lives, used to be a pretty quiet small town. It's just full of homeless people everywhere. He's a firefighter. The number of calls he's going on has like quadrupled in the last decade, right? So now the fire department is inundated with calls for issues that happen with these people, right? And they're leaving places trash. There's needles everywhere. No one would even want to stay in the motels anyways at this point, because they're so, trashed up.
Right.
And then these hotel owners are like, they're basically transitioning the hotels to exclusively catering to homeless. So, on the one hand, like, it sounds like a great idea. Let's just get a rich guy to just handle this problem for us, or have like the state is doing.
Right.
But then on the other hand, like, if you give free things to people, there's just going to be more and more and more.
Yep.
The demand will never stop.
Yeah.
And it'll just balloon.
Yeah, I think part of this in regards to what Glenn, and I think that many people have had this kind of thought, is that, there's 2 things. There's the NIMBY, the not in my backyard, which is really what a lot of people who are wanting to regentrify areas are struggling with, because, the factors of bringing in, a lower affluent population, they hurt businesses. They hurt businesses who are going to be charged, in regards to loss of business, in regards to, their operations, which also affects tax dollars for cities. And you end up with these situations where you've got exactly what you're describing, where you've got a collection of body of people who are, are damaging to the building of a society that needs to really be there to really even collect enough tax dollars to manage the issue. And we're talking about, a facility that could be built. I think the idea would be that it would potentially not be built within a location that has a lot of, hopefully, gentrifying business that's growing for the people who are, I'll call it, well tax-paying members of society, but built in a location that's a little more remote, where we are actually, what I would hope is rehabilitating people, actually getting them to a position where they want to, rejoin society. And the mental health issue, it's a large one. And, and that's one that I think most people really struggle with, because there's this kind of sentiment in California where, oh, well, they just need housing. But the reality is that housing isn't really going to fix the issue if you're talking about a mental health struggle.
Correct.
And that mental health struggle for many of these people, from, talking to many people who volunteer with the homeless, many people who are homeless, they don't want to rejoin society. They have become very much comfortable living not in society. They don't want to come back to a job that they have to show up to on time. They don't want to pay taxes. They don't want to have to do the things that require a lot of responsibility, because they, in many ways, to Trevor, kind of what you're mentioning, they've been given services, and as a result, I don't know what the exact number is for Los Angeles. Say again.
They're content with what's being handed to them.
They're content with what's being handed to them, and within markets like Los Angeles, they've spent billions on the problem, and it has grown the issue. It has not fixed it. It has actually made it larger. And they've made, in many ways, access to drug paraphernalia easier. They have, made camping on the streets easier. And there's been situations where these individuals have had their lives become, somewhat convenient to be living, in this method. And, and I think that's the struggle. What I really wanted to come back to in regards to, this topic of, how do we correct, these issues. And really, while we're in this really hard spot right now of how to really help this body of people, because I think that's really the issue. Most people see individuals are homeless, and most people don't have a heartless view, but it is a question of how to actually help them. Some people have a little bit more of a tough love mentality, where others have a little bit more of a, hey, let's throw more money and, kind of accommodations at the issue. Which one is the right one? I would argue is probably more in line with a little more of the tough love rather than the accommodating lifestyle that doesn't help. But on a better note, what I'm going to come back to with Glenn, and this is what I was really going to bring up, is, these individuals who end up on the streets, who end up using drugs, didn't start out of nowhere. It started at home, started probably with a bad family life, and it started with an individual who didn't actually have someone who was really a good resource to their family. And very specifically, Glenn, you being there to, raise Tony, your oldest son, and then to be a father to, your the son of the woman that you married, that you later had 2 kids with. You have done very much what we want to see more of in society, of, having parents who are actively involved in the growth of their kids, so that they stay away from these activities and behaviors that end up potentially with really serious pitfalls, and not just a damage to them as a personal individual, but that now as a society, we want to help and get these individuals help and assistance. And it's hard. It's late. It's late. And this is where, this is really the reason I brought it up when you said it. You say these individuals, and I just see, what you've done with being such a, really a great father to all your four boys, is that, we want to see more of that. That's what we'd like. That's what I personally would like to see in regards to society, is having more families take active roles with their kids, so that, we don't end up with this percentage of people that are, on the streets, addicted to drugs and having mental health issues, which is probably a combination of those things.
I have a question about that for you.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Like you got two. I mean, I see what you're, and everything you're doing, looks, really successful from an outside perspective, including 2 of your sons. Half of your kids are in the business with you now. How did you get them interested in that, in real estate or in entrepreneurship?
Well, that's a good question. And I've been always one to say, show kids something and let them decide. So I've never pushed either of them to be in the business. So Tony, my oldest, has been in the business really for, almost 8 or 10 years now. So he's pretty engrossed in real estate. He owns 3 rentals, married a couple of years ago, has kids. So he's got a nice trajectory from where he's going. My younger son, I'm not sure this is going to be his career of choice. I think he's just kind of working with me and doing his thing, but he's got other goals in life, and I don't foresee him doing real estate full time, although he wants to own real estate, which is a good thing to own. But I've always giving them the opportunity to do what they want to do. And I think that's the right way to do it.
Just show them, just let them see.
Yeah,
Did you take them to business meetings?
Yeah, and Tony starting out, we used to go to my real estate club with me. He became a real estate agent. He was in the military for a little while. When he came out, he became a real estate agent. So that worked. And Vince was 4 years up in Reno, and he managed the house that I bought for him. Called it the Bro Mansion. It's probably famous, but so he had 6 or 8 guys, that went to college living in the home while they went to school, learned a little bit more about management of a home and all that. And that worked out well for him also. And the other 2 have no interest in real estate, just like they have no interest in sports. I mean, I grew up playing sports, loving sports, and 2 of my 4 kids have nothing to do with sports. They don't even know what a football is, let alone, know all the ins and outs of all the different sporting events and all that.
What are they doing?
Well, one of them's into computers, and he does improv, which is interesting. He's a very quiet kid. That's Evelyn's oldest son. He does improv. He'll probably end up on Saturday Night Live someday, and we'll be proud of him, of course. And the other one is real quiet. He's going to school, and he's doing some graphic design and whatnot, but he's a very quiet kid. So.
And with these boys, raising them, you just mentioned, introducing them to things and seeing if it sparks interest. What things when they were growing up did you introduce them to? Like, how is that process showing them?
Fortunately, I've done fairly well. So we've always been able to travel. And as a family, in fact, we were just looking at our next vacation every Thanksgiving for about the last 10 or 12 years. We go somewhere as a family. And that's getting expensive now that we have the 4 kids and 2 is 6. And then there were 2 grandkids and the wife. So now we're up to 10 or 12 people, and it gets more expensive, obviously, to take everybody to Hawaii or take them to Mexico or wherever we're going. So lost my train of thought. What was I talking about that? So we've traveled a lot. And that's one of the things I've always enjoyed with them. I'm, somebody could call me a workaholic. Yes, I work a lot, but I do take time off. I take my vacations. And when I do, I'm unconnected. I try not to be at work. We go back to New York to visit my family where I grew up every year. And then we take our other 3 or 4 weeks a year elsewhere, international travel here and there. But I've always tried to, at least expose them to travel and other things. And that's worked out well, I think.
That's good. A lot of exposure to not just what we see on a day-to-day in our local environment. I'm guilty of that all the time. Whenever I travel, I always come back with new fervor for the job and a lot better understanding of how much more there is out there than what we just see on a day-to-day. That's the biggest thing I see was when I travel, I go, wow. Because you forget how big the opportunity is. You just see your local set of people who are wealthy. You travel to any place in the world and you realize there's an entire other body of wealth and next level and other things that are just not in our normal scope. So it's fantastic to do that.
Sure.
For me, it was always easier for me to travel on vacations when I had a W-2 job. Now that I'm an entrepreneur, man, the vacation seems so hard to get time off to go do.
It should be the other way around, really, because you're in charge of your time. Like anything, you have to schedule it. You schedule it. You say, this is my time and I'm not involved otherwise.
Yeah.
So
were you good about when you were done for the day working? Well, first of all, like being done before it's too late to have effective time with your family, and then having that effective time, like being there in the moment and the work day's done and now you're here.
Well, that's a good question. I've always said that, like I said, I'm a workaholic, as I've been told by my folks and my family, but I do always put family first. So if there's a family function, I'm there. I'll plan around it. But, typically when I get home in the old days at 5:00, now I'm trying to get home at 3 or 4 in a lot of days, but still 5:00 some days, depending. I don't have a lot of time with the family for that. We have dinner time, we got a little bit of time, and then it's time to go to bed. And I do work weekends, but I work a lot less. I might work 6 hours on a Saturday morning and 3 on a Sunday morning just to catch up and keep things going where there's no disruptions. I can get more accomplished really on a weekend. But if I'm home by 10:00, 11:00 on a Sunday, and my wife's just coming home from church, I haven't missed anything. So I've always had the family time there, but at the end of the day, when you work as much as I do, you don't. I'm going to say, people, I'm not the best father in the world, but I'm not by any means a bad father. I still give a lot of love and attention to my family. But if you were to rate me versus the other guy that's doting on his kids and doing everything with them, that's not me, because I'm focused on work and making money. But that's, again, the first half of my life. The second half of my life, I plan to do the other way around, where I'll be the greatest granddad in the world, because I'm spending more time with them, taking the grandkids on vacation, versus where I might not be able to do it when the kids were young because I was focused on work so much.
Well, yeah, I think that's also a relatively natural progression, and I would argue that, for you right now, 60, going to live to 120, which I think is very real. Half, you got plenty of time. You got plenty of time.
Right. Like anything, people drop dead all the time. You hear, this guy just dropped dead. He got run over, got this, got that. It happens. We never know when we're going to go. But what I've found is if you plan to live a long life and you're healthy enough to do so, there's a good chance you're going to do that. And if you look at the book I'm reading, The Blue Zones, there's many people that they've taken good care of themselves. They work. They still work. Some of these people are 100 years old and they're still working. They still have a physical activity that they do, but that keeps them young and that keeps them with something to do. And they're
planning for more life.
Yeah. Ikigai or Ikigi or something.
Yeah.
So I'm all good.
So Glenn, we're going to wrap it up here. And I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing just really such a wealth of information, both on, I'll call it your fierce responsibility to, being a father to all four of your boys, and to, your career and being so unswayed by, I'll say it, seeing you be so successful because you never let the times that were hard really affect you. You just moved straight through and recognized that was just part of business. And it was something that's kept you, productive, and to a point now, building more life across the board and planning on having just such a long life of accomplishments that, you're really just still barely getting into. When we look at it in that sense, there's so much more to have happen. So how do our guests get in contact with you? You've got investments. You do look for investors. How do the guests find you?
Yeah, I'll give you both my cell and my email. Those are really the best methods. Cell is 702-769-9872. And then my email is the best way, really, because I can get back to you at my leisure based on my schedule, is part of my name. It's G as in Glenn, S as in Sam, and then my last name, Plantone, Plantone @gmail.com.
Glenn Plantone. Great.
Plantone or Plantone?
Well, if you go to Italy, it's Plantone. And when we went over to Italy, it was kind of cool because it was, hey, Plantone. But over here, it's Plantone. That's the way it goes.
Gotcha.
All good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for listening. And you can get more information on Glenn also at our website, realestatedadspodcast.com, where you can get access to information. We will get the copy of the Blue Zone book that Glenn has referred to a couple times on the blog there. And we also have access to the Slack channel where our listeners can connect regarding real estate deals, both for presentation as well as to invest in others. So thank you again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much.